Well, we decided to get a Happijac after all, so I know that's just how it goes. So that puts us in a position now where we're going to have to build a partition wall behind the cab, and I found the perfect one that I want to build. Luckily, a few weeks back, I ran across a video of a build called the Wayfaring Star, and I contacted the builders, Tommy and Angie. Now, we've been communicating back and forth on text and some phone calls, and they sent me some pictures and videos. And based on their design for their van, I'm going to create my version of it in our van. This is one of the more complex things I've attempted in the van. It requires a lot more precision and finesse than I'm accustomed to having to do. But we're going to give it a try. So come along with me and we'll figure it out. But first, I want to send out a heartfelt thank you to Angie, Tommy, Jamie, and Linda. Without your support and help, this would not have been possible. I truly leaned on you guys pretty hard for this one, and again, thank you so much. And as luck would have it, I was actually able to meet up with all of them. We had a great afternoon of storytelling and laughing, and I got to ask a whole bunch more questions about what they're doing and how they're doing it and why. So it was a great day. So just wanted to put that out there and let everyone else know that there's a growing community of super high roof ProMaster builders out there, and we're all finding each other and helping each other. All right, enough of that. Let's get to work. Now, the plywood that Tommy and Angie use is a 3/4 inch, just like I have here. And it's a pre-finished maple, so it has a UV pre-finish on both sides. So if you've watched their video and you think to yourself, gosh, how do they get such a nice finish on their walls and cabinetry? It's because they use that pre-finished product. And I'll put a link to that in the description below. It's from Menards. So Susan and I went to Menards and we looked at the pre-finished products like Tommy uses. So we looked at the maple, we looked at the birch, we looked at, I think they have red oak, and they looked great, but we weren't certain of the colors and how it was going to work in here. We still have some decisions to make. We opted to get the same product, but in an unfinished, so it's a sanded both sides, but essentially the same plywood that they're using. Before we go much farther, let's take a quick look at a couple clips from their newest van, the Wayfaring Star.
With this build, we also went with the Ram ProMaster 3500 159 extended wheelbase. But the difference in this one is we went with the super high roof. That gives us 10 extra inches of building space. There's so much to show you in this van, but the first thing we're going to start with is the heart of the van. It's our family room area. The center of it is this L-shaped sofa that comfortably seats 4 adults. We have an end table on this corner to hold our iPads, laptops, and this side over here is a small end table that houses our games and a food pantry. Okay, for the exciting moment that I promised you, I'm going to show you how this becomes our bedroom. First, you just drop the table, you lay these 2 cushions down, and you head to the kitchen. You open the storage cabinet, you make sure the TV is stowed away, and down you go. Once the bed is in its position, we still have access to our windows for good ventilation or to check out that great view that we might have. The TV swivels out for great viewability, and we can reach our light switches.
This is the Happijac system. These rails that go across here and down and on both sides. The first person we saw to do a bed lift in the front was Ed and Nicole, and they built the concrete oasis. And then when we saw the super high roof ProMaster, we said, hey, we can do that in this van.
Well, that's the full tour of Wayfaring Star. We hope you enjoyed it.
The first piece I'm going to make is the piece of trim that goes right here. And this was the biggest mystery to me when I was trying to figure out where is the attachment point here. Am I drilling into the B-pillar here? Is it glued on? I don't understand how this works, but that mystery has been solved, and I'll show you later. But for now, we've got to make the piece. And to do that, I'm going to make a template. This is not going to be a video where I'm showing you how to do templates, because there are much better videos than that. My methodology, quite honestly, is to do a little bit of everything and what works for me at the time. So there'll be different methods used in different parts of my build to make templates or scribe or do other things. Part of the structure for the partition wall does require plywood to go across here and down here. So this little blob covers the side curtain airbag access. So we're not going to do away with that completely, but really all it's doing is covering up a large section here for that access. So we will end up trimming it here and here, but in the meantime, I'm just going to go ahead and remove it. I did hear some ripping, but I think we can live with that. Okay, I think that'll be all right. So it just has access for the airbag here. So as long as there's something that ends up covering this up and is removable for service, I think it's fine. For the strip that goes here, you do not need to cut into the B-pillar or this trim on the B-pillar. You don't have to do anything with any of this stuff here. It's quite literally free floating. It's attached to the top, bottom, and it's attached by the sheet of plywood that goes over top of it, so that locks it all in place. But what I do have to remove is my beloved handle. I love this handle so much. I don't want to get rid of it. But to make progress, it's coming out. It'll be relocated somewhere else. Don't worry, it's not going away. Just finding a new home. So it's a hodgepodge of a template, but it's pretty good. It is going to be good enough to start with. I think I finally got it. Before I get too far down the path of one solution or another, I do like to have my sanity checks, so that's what we're doing here. So I've put in place this part of the partition wall in the position where I believe it should go, which is right here next to the bench. I don't want to have to remove the bench. I will if I had to, but let's check and see first before we take drastic measures. So why is the position of this partition wall important? It's important for the driver and the passenger seats. Let's take a look. So I don't need the seat to go all the way back. However, there will be some drivers of this vehicle in the future, possibly, that do have longer legs and need to push the seat all the way back. So what I did was, after putting this in place, I moved this seat all the way back as far as it will go, and that's the position it's in now. And I don't know if you could see it or not, but I do still have some clearance, and the seat is slightly reclined. And now I've adjusted the driver's seat to the position where Susan and I typically put it in when we're driving, and look, there's so much space here. On Tommy's van, I think that the partition wall is about 1.5 inches farther into the living area, and that gives a maximum amount of comfort for the driver and passenger to be able to move their chairs all the way back and recline a lot more than in this van. I'll show you the measurements here. So this line is 9 1/8 inch from here. This line is 9 1/8 inch from here. And that's how I get my straight line across the bottom here. This is the basic structure of the beginning of the partition wall. It's basically a rectangle. So you've got 3/4 inch plywood on top, bottom, and both sides. If you have a blank slate, and ideally you would, this piece here would go all the way to the floor and connect up with the other piece that's on the floor. I have a bench in the way, so I've had to make some modifications on my design. The original design itself does call for 4 pieces all connected all the way around. There's a small metal lip on this shelf, and that's what this is pressed up against, and that's what we're going to attach this piece of wood to. So the original design has screws that screw through the metal and down into the wood and don't come all the way through. My design is a bolt, so I'm going to do a bolt through here and through the metal, and then do a nylock nut on the top. I feel that will be a lot more secure for my design. It's also important to note that this piece here is only attached to the bottom piece of wood here, and then this piece of wood here. It's not attached to anything else. The B column is completely untouched by this. When we put the face plywood here, we will be able to push this out. I'm going to push it out to this level here and kind of make it rounded all the way through there. Kind of see like that. So it will end up like this behind the plywood. So put the plywood in place, get that all measured and cut correctly, and then once we're ready, then we just screw through that face plywood into this, and that's how it holds. In a similar fashion, this piece of wood is attached at the bottom and also at that middle shelf, but it will also be attached at the very top. but it's not going to be attached to this wall in any place in the original design. So in that design, this went down to the floor, connected up to the board that runs across. I can't do that. So mine will be attached to this wall here as its anchor point, but nothing through here attached to this piece of wood here, and then there'll be an attachment at the top, which we'll show later. The angle I cut on this wood to make this fit correctly is 10 degrees on each side. Using the telescopic support poles, I would brace against the back wall and then push against this piece here to make it bow out. And when I got it to where I liked it, I would put a screw in. So now this is being held all the way across with screws. And now I'll simply be able to take a pencil or a pen and just scribe this line so I can take it to the jigsaw and cut that out. And then theoretically, it will match back up perfectly, but you know, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be close enough. Okay. What I've done so far, well, primarily, is make these 4 pieces that I showed you a few minutes ago. Pre-drilled all of the fastener holes, painted everything with 2 coats of Kills mold and mildew primer, all sides, and am starting to test fit the pieces now. So this is the piece that goes across here, and it's a pretty simple piece. It's quite literally 5 inches all the way through here. It's just adjusted at the ends just to fit. This is one of the trickier pieces of this partition wall build. This board right here is actually longer than the sideboards will allow it. So without this brace here, this sideboard would want to come into about here, and this side would want to come in here, which means that this board doesn't fit in there. So in order to get this in, you do have to have some brace, whether it's something like this or another piece of wood, whatever you've got, to be able to push this back so that you can fit this in. So then you want to get this in, and you want to go ahead and do the attachment on both sides, get all of the screws in there. I've got pocket screws underneath these. So those are all currently attached. Once you get those attached, then and only then do you raise this up into place. And again, whatever method you have, whether it's a helper or one of these, you just get it up in there the best you can. So I had pre-drilled all of the holes, not only in the wood, but also the metal. And I went through and painted the metal, painted the wood. So I'm using 1/4 by 1 inch and nylock nuts to go with that. And that just barely fits. Right? Even though I used the 1 inch bolts here, once you get them started, there's plenty of thread there. You just made a little challenge getting it started. But no worries, got it done. Then you just put this back down and put these back on these 3 locations, tighten them down. And then when it's fully down, it will kind of cover these nuts and bolts here. You can see it's not going to be a problem. All right, I just finished making the 2 structure pieces that go up in the pizza oven overhead cab storage area. And another pair of DIY van builders, Jamie and Linda, are doing the exact same partition wall. And for reference, this is what their piece looks like in the pizza oven. 1 on each side. So let me show you what they look like. They are mirror images of each other. So I've written the dimensions here. I'm going to give you a close-up in a few moments. But one of the things I want to point out that's absolutely critical is this line right here. So this is exactly 7.5 inches. And this is where the bottom of the shelf goes. There's going to be a shelf inside that storage area that splits the top and bottom. For my purposes, it's because we're going to have the elevator bed, so the elevator bed will be up at the ceiling. So the lower storage compartment will be for things we're going to access during the day. And then when the bed is down, the upper storage compartment will be things to access at night, like pillows, blankets, and things like that. Something else to note on here is that I put this angle at the very top. This is where it's going to connect up to the van, and the van kind of curves up near the ceiling. So there's no place to put a screw in here because there's an open cavity on the metal, or here, same thing. but I can put one right here up at an angle like this. So that's why I have to go all the way to the very top and put this angle on it to get as much of the wood in there as I possibly can to secure that top position. That'll be more clear in a few minutes. I used a table saw to put this angle. This is a 35-degree angle. I don't know if that's the exact perfect angle. For my van, it works fine. Right, let me give you a close-up of these here. You're going to start with a 17 by 19 inch rectangle of plywood, and then you'll be able to cut this pattern from that size shape. It's important to know that if your partition wall sits back farther or is closer than mine is, then whereas I had the 3.75 inches at the bottom, you may have more or less. So that would be the dimension to look out for a change. All right, we've got them in place on both sides. They're not exactly where they need to be positioned. I'm gonna shore this up just a little bit, but I wanna make sure that this is flush with this shelf as well as this piece on the side, because the plywood will sit up against all of this and this helps keep it in place. You can see how the cutouts go up and over the shelf. I wanted to make sure that I have access to be able to pull these out if I need to pull them out, so I made sure that this was all open here. This is wide enough for that shelf unit to not only have the shelf here, but then a lip next to the shelf. You can see how it fits with the headliner. This part goes on the inside of it. This part back here goes behind it. And at the top of both sides, we're going to use self-tapping metal screws for the connectivity, but we'll also have other connection points. On this side, we'll have at least 3 different spots to put screws into, as well as up through the bottom here, as well as the larger panel here. On this side, we have just the one up here that we can get to, and then we're going to make a bridge between here and here to provide extra support. This is the driver's side. Let's take a look and see what we've got to connect up to. See, I can't put a screw in here or here or here going straight in like this. So this is where I'm aiming for that screw to hold the top of this. And that's why I have to make it as high as I possibly can to get up in there. What am I getting caught on? Okay. To be able to get up in there and try to get something going at an angle up like this into the metal. Okay, we're on the passenger side. We'll take a look at where we can connect to up here. This one has a few more options because this is flatter here. We'll be able to hit more of this. I'll be able to put screws in here and here and even here if I need to, whereas I didn't have that on the other side. This is what this side is going to look like. I put this little bridge in between and I had to cut this angle. So I made a cut at 15 degrees. In terms of where this bridge goes, it could go anywhere you want really, but I wanted it as far down as possible so I can get tools up and down on it to get screws going at different angles into this back section here. This one I'm just going to put screws directly into it this direction. Choose your placement based on the tools you have and what you're able to do with it. I just cut the shelf. It's 52.5 wide, 19.5 deep. I'll write that down in just a second. Let's do a test fit. If it fits, I'll write it down. Okay, I've got the depth, works, the width works. Okay, and here's the shelf, 52.5 wide, 19.5 deep. So during the process, I did run across a couple of situations where I came up with little tips or tricks. You might find them helpful. For one, before you attach this bolt here, or the one on the other side that's similar to this, first you want to attach here and here. Make sure that this corner right here is solid and exactly where you want it to be, because that's at an angle. So when you pull that up, it's going to pull the entire panel up with it. You don't want that to happen. So make sure you fasten here and here and here. Get this all strong before you connect that up there. I also used the Loctite marine adhesive on all the joints. So the next tip I had was when you go to place this shelf, use couple little blocks like this in the location that you want that shelf to be, one on this side, one on that side. So when you put these in, then you know that this shelf is going to be at the right height at least. The next thing I did was I removed the covers over the B pillars, tops and bottoms, so I could have full access to them. It made it a lot easier to put this piece in. Since I had exposed the B pillars, it was a great opportunity to not only clean them, because they're always dirty when you uncover something, might as well clean it, and stuff it with insulation. So both sides have the Happijac wool, so now I'm fully insulated top to bottom throughout these columns. But wait, there's more. I also took the opportunity to run some electrical wiring. I don't know exactly where I'm going to have lights. Will I have lights on the panel here? Will I have lights in the overhead compartment? I don't know. So I did run the wiring, and I just left a service loop here. And of course I do label all my wiring, so it does have a label on it here. It does have a label on it somewhere in here, so that in case you're ever doing work and you see what's this wire, you'll know what that wire is. And of course it's labeled at the other end at the fuse panel. And then on this side, I was able to pull down the wires for the awning. So the awning has 3 sets of wires, one for the motor and 2 different independent lights. So I have those all here. And then I have the power supplies running from the distribution panel here. Oh, one more thing. I know this is visibly drooping a little bit, and that's something I'm going to be able to fix once I get the actual face panels in. So I'll get them placed where I need them to be, and then I'll get this moved up to where I want it to be. And the way I'm going to do that is just pile a bunch of blocks under here until I get it to the height that I want it to be. I have different sizes of blocks of wood, so I'll get it to where I need it to be, get that all connected up, and it'll be perfect. All right, so I'm about to cut the holes for the shelf access, and this is how I did it. So consider there's going to be 18 inches gap between these 2 pieces when they're installed, and this is 10 inches and this is 10 inches. We're going to have a total 38 inches wide by about 6 inches and 6 inches. And so from the floor up to the bottom of the first shelf is about 65. And then that goes up to 71-ish. The next one starts at 73. This is going to be left in place as a separator between the 2 shelves, as well as provide a lip so that the things on the shelves, don't fall out so easily. And in case you're wondering, the total height of these panels is roughly 83.5. I just finished installing both of these panels. What you see here is not the finished product. So I do have all of these screw faces showing. Ultimately, those will be hidden. Also, these pieces here aren't complete. That is next on the list. I just want to show you where I'm at so far. If I were using a pre-finished plywood so that this would be the final product, then I would not have done any of these screws this way. They would all be pocket screws from the back, and you would not see any of this. But for our purposes, we're going to actually add either fabric or vinyl or both or shiplap or you name it. We haven't figured out exactly what we're doing with this yet. We have some concepts, and we've got some materials, and we've ordered more samples, and we're looking at options. Also notice I have some cutouts in the partition wall. This one here would be for the awning switches. So I have 2. There'll be one for the awning motor itself and one for the awning lights. That'll be side-by-side rocker switches. And this one I'm calling Fritter's Portal, because Fritter likes to get here on the sofa and look out the window. So I didn't want to block his view of the window, but also I put it in a strategic location where I can actually look over my shoulder as a driver and see out this window just to double check that blind spot. Not necessarily while driving. I find that while driving, I'll use the mirrors and the other technology I have in the van. But if you're in a parking space or parking lot or some other area where there might be people and other things moving, I like having that added security of being able to look out this window and this window. So that's one of the reasons I made this as wide as it is, not just because of us getting through, because the distance between the seats is what, 12 to 14 inches. So I did make this wider than that for the sole purpose of me being able to look over out this window. These pieces here are pretty straightforward. You've got some shelving to screw directly into. The top piece is a little trickier. So we've got a back piece here, which we're going to connect like this. And then we'll be able to put this in here like that. Okay. Let me go ahead and do that now. I've also marked the locations here where I expect it to kind of fall on the back there. It's not exact, it's just a place where I can put the adhesive. So I am going to put the Loctite marine adhesive on this, as I have done on all the other panels, so that it will prevent any squeaking or future issues. What I'm not happy with is the piece that goes here. I've had a couple different iterations. They haven't worked out for one reason or another. The first one was just the panel that went straight across like this, but my aftermarket handle, which is a larger handle, didn't fit. It actually, I needed about an inch and a half of additional space. So what I came up with was this little pocket in the door. So this would sit kind of like this, where the handle would be, so you can reach down in here and grab it and pull it. Well, a couple problems with this. First, when I tried to install it, it broke. So that having different pieces, and this is a kind of a weak joint, so it's not as structurally sound as I would like it. Now, it doesn't need to hold any of this structure in place, but it itself is going to be part of a moving van going down the road and having additional stress put on some of these joints. And I thought about a lot of different things. I thought, well, I'll just put a block of wood, here and really shore up this connection top and bottom. And I can do that, and maybe I'll play with that. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't look great. It just looks stupid. It's just kind of a weird, awkward, when you look at it from inside the van and you're looking at this, I just don't like it. So what if instead of having it boxy like this, there was more kind of curved? So if I could get back to doing one piece, I won't be able to use a 3/4 inch plywood because it's just not flexible enough. So can I do a 1/2 inch? I need to go down 1/4. Again, this piece is not structural, it's aesthetic. So it's just going to be something that blocks, the cab. And I don't want it to be partially blocking. I want to be able to completely black out the cab ultimately. So I got some 1/4 inch plywood, cut each of them into the proper shape for the opening. And then I created this jig where it mimics the opening of the door cutout that I already have on the partition wall, which is this piece here. It's 11 inches long, 2 and 5 inches deep. And so I made sure that this started at the right location. I marked that from the current van. And the curve I was able to achieve is not too bad. I'd like to have a little more, curve here, get back here sooner, but that's still fine. I think it'll work out all right. After installing the partition wall, I became increasingly dissatisfied with the job that I did. For one, all these screw holes, well, the screw holes themselves, not a big deal, but the fact that they're not really lined up and they didn't hit the target correctly. Over time, I fear that with the van moving, that it's just going to be an issue with coming loose, squeaking, not being as structurally sound. So that's one problem. Another problem is this. That was a huge mistake. I wanted to have a cutout for the sliding door. Let me show you. So I have an aftermarket handle that's larger than the standard handle. If I use the standard handle, I might have been able to get away with not cutting this out at all, but still it would be really difficult to reach your hand in there and grab it to operate. As it is, the plan I came up with was to create a little pocket here. Well, that just looks stupid. Well, not necessarily wrong. I came up with a couple ideas for improvement on a number of things. One is the floor. Previously, I just had a 5-inch wide piece of 3/4 inch plywood going all the way across to connect to the bottom of these uprights here. And then I had a gap between that and, let's just take a look at it. So originally I had about a 5-inch piece of plywood going all the way across, which meant that I had a gap between here and here. And I don't know, I think this is much better. So I came up with this piece here that fills that entire gap all the way down, and I think it looks a lot nicer. Okay, I did the rough cut and I put it in place here. When we go to install this, I'll get behind it and push this forward like this until it gets almost flush with that, and then tack it down from the back with the L brackets. So notice we didn't cut back as far as this section here. This is not going to carry over to the next piece of plywood. It's just going to go straight down. I felt that I didn't need to go quite as deep as I had, so I'll bring it forward about 1/4 of an inch from where I had it before. So it'll sit flush like that. So even though this is a rough cut, it won't be rough always. I cut it so we have a little extra material on there, so that once we get this tacked in place and it's where it's supposed to be, we've got 2 things we're going to do. One is take a palm router with a flush bit and have the flush part go against this, cutting off all of this extra here so it's nice and smooth all the way down. The next thing we're going to do is take another piece of 1/4 inch ply, wrap it with marine vinyl, and make it this wide instead of this wide. So when this is here and this is this wide, you get to see just that one piece of trim with the marine vinyl. You don't see 2 separate pieces like this. Okay. It's important to note that while I'm redoing these 2 pieces of the partition wall, I'm not redoing any of the structure that's up in the pizza oven. The next step is to take this out and use it as a template on the new piece of plywood that I just got. I think that looks a little better than the last one. I don't see any trouble spots. I think it fits really nicely. It's a little tight right here. I might trim some of that off. So let me take a little bit off right here. It might be fine, but you know, wood does expand and contract a little bit. So if this expands and pushes the ceiling up, I don't know, I'd rather just be safe. Take that little bit off. I'm so much happier with this one than the last one. I can't even tell you how much of an improvement this is. I did the same thing for this one. Don't they look great? So much better than the last ones I did. Now I did use the previous partition here to do a new scribe and template for this wall. Now that this wall is mostly in, I have a few more things to tighten up on it, but I was able to get that in really tight. Come take a look. Look how nice and tight and flush this is. So this piece here butts up against it, but these pass through behind it. So I think that additional depth adds a lot of character, and I really like it. Now they're not completely on it. There's a little bit of a gap here, and that's intentional. I don't want it to be rubbing up against it as we're driving down the road. The next thing I started to do is planning for the next pieces. So when the bed comes down to its lowest point, the bottom of the bed will be somewhere approximately here. And that means with a 6-inch mattress, the top of the bed's going to be somewhere approximately here. Now it could be plus or minus an inch. I don't know. Until we get it installed, I don't know exact dimensions, but I've got a pretty good idea of where it should land. Now if the top of the bed is here, and for some reason we want to sit up in bed, if I sit straight up in bed and put pillows behind me, maybe to watch TV, because a TV might be over here, or we might do a projector where the projector screen is straight behind you, maybe we'll sit up. So if I sit up, the top of my head might come to approximately here. What that does is it tells me whether or not I can put, you know, a wall sconce or something else, you know, here. So I wouldn't want to put anything here in the event that I sit up in bed and hit the back of my head on it. So I'm trying to think ahead. I know it's unlike me. But if we're going to do a wall sconce, then potentially this is a decent location for that. But then we're getting into the ceiling, because the ceiling is going to come across to right about here. So do you really want to have a light right up at the ceiling like that? I also thought this would be a good location for a light switch for the lights that will be on this wall here. So I do plan on doing LED strip lights around this area. So this switch will be easily reachable from either the sofa or in bed to turn this on and off. I'll have another one corresponding over here at the same exact height and the same distance from the edge, the same type of switch, and that will be for the LED strip lights on this side. I like to try to keep the switch near the lights that they operate. It just makes sense that way. I will be installing a Happijac, and with a Happijac, it's absolutely critical that the walls are perfectly straight up and down. I have two sources of truth. One is that first shelf right up here, and the second is this bottom piece. So this bottom piece is the exact same distance from the van metal all the way across. It's perfectly in place, and I found that distance by using my 6-foot long level, so I know that that has a perfectly straight edge. So I was able to tack that in up against that first shelf, which is my single source of truth up top, and then make sure it was absolutely at a 90-degree angle against the floor. I did that by using a 4-foot level going across the floor to get as much of the floor as possible. That way I'm not isolating a part of the floor that might have a dip in it for whatever reason. So using that as my floor plane, I was able to use this and go back and forth until I found that perfect measurement as to how far out from the van wall these needed to be in order to be perfectly straight up and down. I spent a lot of time and effort making sure that these measurements were absolutely precise. So at a minimum, I know that this shelf that goes across at this level and the bottom piece I have run across the floor are exactly where I need them to be in order for these partition walls to be straight up and down and level with each other, perfectly in line. So this piece here is made out of 3 separate pieces of 1/4-inch plywood. Now when I made this, I made 4 pieces of that plywood. Here's the 4th one, and I made 4 on purpose because this one I wanted to use as the template to do the final side piece. So what I did was I put it in place, push it up against this wall here, and at multiple points along here, I measured from this far wall here to this edge here, and I marked those on this template now. Right? What about this? There's obviously going to be a gap here of some sort, and I think what I'll end up doing is just taking another piece of flat 1/4-inch ply and just putting it, right along through here, attaching it to the back of this. It's not structural, it's just aesthetic. And it provides that privacy and complete light blockage from the front of the cab to the back living space. This is what I come up with so far. I'm not sure if this is going to be the final iteration or not, but it should cover everything. And it sticks out a little bit right here, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. And when I wrap this with marine vinyl, it'll stick out a little bit more, but that's fine because I'd rather it stick out a little bit more this way than to not be wide enough. I'm still looking to figure out how I can put a piece right in here to cover this gap. Haven't figured that out yet. So I wonder if I can scribe a piece to go in here, kind of cover like that. So scribe it into this section like this to fill up this entire gap, top to bottom. Well, one thing led to another, and now we have yet another iteration of the plan. So I thought instead of just having a piece that goes from here to here like this, why not go top to bottom? So I made this piece to figure out how that would look, and it's gonna be kind of like this. So this can go right up to the weather stripping here, be fully covered with the marine vinyl this way, and then this panel comes in this way. That does mean some modifications to the piece that I had in here. Rather than having this piece here and then jag in, it's just going to go from here straight up. But before I modify the piece that I made, that took a long time with the jig and the multiple layers of plywood, I'm going to try it with this. I got all the pocket holes pre-cut, and then I painted them because that's exposed wood. I also painted all of the edges. Now this piece here was a really nice finished piece, but it's going to be down on the floor underneath and out of sight, so you'll never see this again after I get this fully installed. I also put 1/2-inch felt all the way around the perimeter, just in the event this expands and rubs up against the metal. I don't want any squeaking, so that's done. I also cleaned really well. So scrubbed all of this, scrubbed the floor, cleaned the crevice as well as I could, got the vacuum in here. I actually found that this particular nozzle works really well. This is intended to clean out your dryer vent, so we get down there in the dryer vent and clean all the lint out, but it works really well in the van. Right. So let's check the next thing on the list. This is my list. Sometimes while I'm sitting here trying to figure out what to do and in what order to do it in, if for some reason it all comes to me and I see it several steps ahead, I will document that and then refer to it, because again, I'll get in busy mode and just start doing stuff, and then before you know it, I've installed something with adhesive and screws, and then it's too late to undo it. Well, it's not too late, but it does make it a little more difficult. All right, I believe this is currently in its final installation place. And I know when I say that, I just jinx myself. It's not going to be the final, it'll be almost the final, but it's close enough regardless. So I do have this tacked in place to where it's going to be. I have the base plate tacked in place, neither are fully installed. I have this connected exactly where I want it to be. And now it's time to trim off this edge right here. So what I'm going to do is use a palm router, and I've got a flush bit here. I don't know if you can see that. So this part right here is going to ride along the material that's the edge or the depth that you want to cut. And then this will cut all the excess off of the other piece. So it's going to ride along like this, with this following the contours of this piece here and shaving off all the excess here. So when I work with wood in the van, I make sure that I seal every part of that wood. Both sides, all the edges have to be fully sealed. Even a person with healthy lungs doesn't want to be around mold and mildew. And a van is a very small, confined space, and there will be moisture buildup and spills and other things that can cause mold and mildew. So for Susan and myself, we both have asthma. It's more than a little bit dangerous for us. So that's why it's not optional for me to seal all the wood, it's mandatory. Now traditionally I work with plywood and wood that's not pre-finished, but currently I'm working with these pre-finished boards for the partition wall, and that presented a challenge because normally I don't have to worry about the paint. You just paint everything and it's all, it all comes out fine. But in this case I have to be very careful to protect the surface from getting paint on it. So what I'm going to do is I'll paint the top and bottom with the Kills primer that has the mold and mildew preventative in it, because those are the two areas that will be most likely exposed to the moisture. So on the sides, we're going to paint it with this matte clear, and I'm going to spray paint it on there. So to make sure I don't get any overspray, I've taped off all the edges, and I've also put this piece of construction paper over everything. Okay, let's go. Let's get this installed. Not yet, we've got a lot more to do first. One of the things we have to do is install 2 electrical boxes and then the electrical. So these are going to be somewhere around here on each side. And they're going to house this outlet that has 1 normal plug and 3 USB-Cs. So this will sit up in here like this on the wall. One of the USB-Cs is going to feed a wireless charger on each side. And then when the partition wall goes in and all these side pieces go in, it's going to be very difficult to get this out. And I do need to access this occasionally. I have electronics in here, and I don't want to cover that up permanently, and I don't want to make it such a pain in the butt to get to. Again, I write myself notes. I'm going to make a cutout here, so I'm just going to cut this out the size I need it to be, and then have some sort of panel on here where it just Velcros on. Ideally, once this goes back in place, it never has to come out again. I also need to install 2 of these. These are pocket hole sisters. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. So it's the pocket hole connectors for the partition wall that I'm gonna sister to these here. And I'm going to do that here, as well as on the side, as well as up here, as well as smaller ones to go here and here. So I went to cut the pocket holes in this, but I wasn't able to get the drill at the right angle, right? So the pocket hole jig will sit here, and then the drill has to drill up into it, but the drill is bulky enough, it hits up against this, and I can't get it past this. So long story short, I made these for this particular location. These will mount up in here like this, one on each side, and then that will be ready for the partition wall when it comes in. What else do I have? Okay, yep. So I need to cut a center groove in the partition wall. I'm going to cut the groove on the straight sides that are the pass through to the cab. And basically we're going to take a bit like this, which is a 1/16 cut. And I've got to put this in the position that it cuts exactly straight down the middle of the 3/4 inch. And then we're going to put an edging on there that's 3/4 inches wide and has a T-barb in the center. I just finished cutting this piece. This is the access panel to get to the electronics. Because once I put all this in here, I could undo it if I ever needed to access this, but why not just make the access? I don't need to make the panel that covers this today. Today, all I needed to do is make sure this was cut out so that when I install it, it will never have to uninstall it again. So I can put it in there, put the screws in, and don't worry about it. Let's see how it fits. There, that's plenty of access. So it's 5.5 inches wide and about 6 inches tall. And that's more than enough to access everything in here. All right, I just made my first test cut with the router and put in the little test piece here. I just cut off a little piece like this and put it in. This is not centered, but that's not the big deal because I can ultimately find center. The big deal is that it's flush on one side, but sticks out on the other. So that when I do get it centered, that means it will stick out a little bit on both sides. So I literally had to stop and text Tommy and ask him if he had the same experience and to figure out, what he did about it. He actually said that he prefers it to stick out a little bit on each side because it helps hide some of the edge imperfections from cutting it with the table saw. So that's what we'll do. Let me show you what that looks like here. So it's flush on this side, but it sticks out a little bit on this side here. You can see that. So then half of this will be showing on each side. And for my little test pieces, I'm just going to do something like that size. In the finished piece we're going to install, I did put 3 layers of painter's tape on the edge just to prevent any scratching that this may cause. When I make my measurement on how deep to set this bit, I also put 3 layers of the tape here. And I've got the tape on here as well for protection. So it should be like for like. So the measurement I get off of this should be accurate. It's pretty darn close. Got a little tiny bit of a lip here. Got a little tiny bit of a lip here. Let's see if they match when I peel that back. So that's pretty good. I think we're ready. The cutting is done on this panel, but while it's still here, I'm going to install the edge trim. It's the T-barb edge molding, and I'll put the link in the description below. And I think it'd be a lot easier to install it here. All right, I finished my list, double checked everything, thought about it again, made sure there wasn't more things to go on the list and get checked off. I think we might be ready. But before I do the installation, let me go over the parts that make up this solution. So it seemed like it was very complicated. At the end of the day, if I knew exactly what I was doing and could just go and make these pieces, it would have taken a lot less time. But my process of learning, changing, adapting, iterating, I went so many different directions, but I'm here now, and this is the solution. The only item that's not presented here is the floor piece because I have installed that in its final place, and I'm not moving it because I think it's perfect. So that's in, and then we've got 2 of the partition wall panels. I've carved out the access for this, so once this is installed, this piece of plastic never has to be removed again. So I don't have to worry about having to take all this stuff out to be able to get access to the electronics back there. So this is done. these are done. I'm not cutting any more holes in the partition walls. They are as they are. So attached to the partition wall by the slider is this piece here, and it's going to attach by the L brackets. So pretend that this is the partition wall here. It's going to face outward, and it's got this curve so that you can reach in and grab the handle and open the door from the inside. So this is 3 pieces of 1/4-inch ply that I glued together and put in a jig to make this shape. So it's not the strongest material. It's not as strong as a normal 3/4-inch ply sheet of plywood. And that's why I went with the L brackets for the installation rather than trying to screw into it this way, because this piece is heavy. So with any luck, this is going in right now. Currently it's just set in place. Checking a couple of things. One thing I'm going to check is to make sure that I still have 8 7/8 inches exactly from the back side of here to this piece of metal on the van. And I have 8 15/16. So it's kind of what I was afraid of. That's why I do these test fits. So the difference is this edge. Remember how the edge is coming over just a little bit? So it's not allowing that to sit flush against here. I imagine the same thing is going to happen at the top. So let me trim that out real quick. Okay, I just did the trimming and I brought it back in. If this were going to be somewhere where it's visible, I would have done some sort of flush trimming tool. But this is down here, so I just took a straight razor blade, sliced it off at the bottom and also the top. And I also went from about 15 inches down on this side because I may have a bench here that also needs to sit flush up against this. So just thinking ahead a little bit. And 7/8 exactly. So one of the things I did was on the floor where I'm not going to put adhesive, I have 3/4 inch felt underneath this right now. So now I'm going to pull this back. I'm going to put the marine adhesive along the part right here where the pocket holes go in. So I'm going to go ahead and get that glued and screwed right now. All right, the next step is to install this piece here. And if you are going to be doing the same or similar install, I would recommend not to tack in the top or the bottom at this time, because we do still have a lot of kind of pushing and pulling to do on this to get it to line up correctly. It actually lines up much better to connect these before you tack in the top and bottom. Next, we're going to fit this piece in there. So you can see how this is going to cover this gap completely. And then we're going to have the finished piece go on here. All right, so I am going to go into the side of this. I've mentioned before it's not that strong because it's 3 pieces of 1/4 inch that are kind of sister together. But this is a very lightweight piece. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as step 1. I'm going to pre-drill the holes and then put small screws in there. So afterwards I'll come back through, and this is 1/2 inch Baltic birch. I'm going to paint these and I'm going to put them on the back of this, on the face of it. And then that also gives me another surface to put a screw into from this piece. It is wide enough. I made sure it's wide enough to be able to do that all the way down through here. So I'll put at least 3 of these in strategic places just for extra support. All right, so I just put that 1 screw in. I'm going to just follow along through here and put additional screws where I can. And then, like I said, I'll be able to come back through here and put these blocks in place like this, attach it this way, and then put additional screws in this way, pre-drilling, of course. And the final piece comes in here like this. So I'm going to pre-drill some holes in this, and we're going to put the finish washer with a nice stainless steel screw on that to match the other finish washers and screws I have in the rest of the build. All right. So I made marks every 10 inches. So it's 60 inches total from top to bottom for where the screws are going to go. I What I want to do is make sure that if I put the screws there, is that the right place to keep it in the shape I want it to be in. So there's a screw here and one there. That holds nicely. There's one there, one there. That holds that curve. Here, here, good. Top, bottom, good. So that'll work. I just need to figure out the right amount of space from this edge in to make them all uniform. All right, I'm going to start at the top. So let me put this in place where I think it should go. All right, that's installed. Look at that. This is the first time I'm seeing it as well. I've had all the different pieces separated, assembled separately, test fitted separately, but never have I put them all together. This is the first time. I am actually quite impressed. Look at how nice this contour is, and look at this piece here. It completely blocks out the cab. Now I still have a note down here on the back side of this that I'm going to put just some standard automotive rubber insulation right back here, self-adhesive, so it'll be stuck on the back side. So that'll fill that gap. You won't have any light coming through there at all. Final piece going in, plenty of glue. I don't think that's coming off ever. So I'm just going to get that up in place. I've got some items on the punch list. One of those items is to make the frame to go around here. Also on the punch list is to get the light switches done. So these aren't installed, they're just kind of sitting here just to give you an idea of where they're going to go. So over here we have the awning in and out, awning light switch for this side of the van for LED lights, light switch for this side of the van, LED lights in the living room, bedroom area, not all the way through the van, just this area. I do also have wire run up through here. This is for 12-volt connection to do lights up in here. I do have plans on putting LED lights all in through here so that this will be lit up. It will also have a dimmer, the exact same dimmer switch as we have here. I just don't have a location for the lights or that switch yet, but it needs to be, accessible somewhere in here where we can just kind of reach in there and turn it on, or reach up here and turn it on. I don't know, but it's pre-wired, it's ready, so I don't have to worry about getting to the B-pillar or anything else. Oh, one more thing before I go. Let me show you this. I need to do a little trimming yet on that side because it's not sitting flat all the way. It's not quite there yet, but come take a look. So I got a little more work to do. I'm not 100% done, but I'm done enough to wrap up this video so I can get it going and out the door. And the punch list items, I'm just going to work as I can throughout the next few days and hopefully get that done. We're not going to put a door in here at this time, maybe never. We've camped in this van for over a year without a partition wall of any sort, so I don't necessarily see the need to have a door, but that might change later, I don't know. So even though on paper this one is relatively straightforward, and after it's all done, and I did it once, it feels straightforward to me. Like if I had to do it again next week, I think I could do a lot better and a lot faster because I could go straight to the solution rather than iterations and attempting things and experimentation and undoing things. It was a lot. It just took a long time. And this was a very challenging build item for me to deal with. So I won't keep you. Sorry, I'm rambling on. Next, I'm going to work on the back walls that will support the Happijac from that side. So this side's ready, that side's next, and then of course, Happijac installation. Thanks for sticking around. I'll see you next time. Not bad. Yep, I'm almost done. I'm coming.